A massive corporation just got exposed for pushing woke propaganda on children, but there's actually a silver lining to the crazy story. All that and so much more is coming up on today's episode of the Brad vs. Everyone podcast, my daily show where I take on the craziest ideas from across our politics and across the internet, all from a center-right, independent perspective. If you're new here, please do consider subscribing and sticking around, and regardless, do hit that like button as we go along, and do comment with your thoughts. I do take the time to read the comments, and I pick a few to respond to in every episode. So now we've got to talk about a huge story that just broke about Home Depot by Fox Business, where they reported on some pretty unsavory activism and partnerships that the mega retailer and home improvement chain has engaged in over the last couple of years, partnering with the Human Rights Campaign, a very far-left, fringe, radical LGBT activist group that we've covered a lot on my channel and in my writing in the past. And it turns out Home Depot, right, we talk about wokeness infecting the corporations, well, Home Depot teamed up with HRC to push propaganda on children about things like gender identity, non-binary, and pansexual. Yes, seriously. Home Depot partnered with an LGBTQ program that provided elementary students with information on pansexual identities and being non-binary. Yeah, because when I think about what kids really need to learn in first and second and third grade, it's really about they-them pronouns. In 2022, Home Depot announced one of its diversity partnerships was the Human Rights Campaign's Welcoming Schools program, which is a program to educate students on transgender and LGBTQ terms. The Welcoming Schools program offers K-12 lesson plans and other LGBTQ resources on its website, which were available before Home Depot announced the partnership. So they had every opportunity to know what they were funding. And it turns out it was a pretty crazy and radical agenda that was being pushed on children through this program. You can see, looking at this bizarre graphic, the gender snow person, understanding gender identity, suggested grade level 3 through 8. Great, so third graders are going to get to engage with this lesson plan, and here are its goals. To explore the concepts of gender identity and gender expression with students, to help students understand the difference between gender identity, sexual orientation, and sex assigned at birth, to help students understand that there are many ways to be a girl, boy, both, or neither. Both? Neither? Oh my gosh. And finally, to help students understand that gender, gender identity, sexual orientation, and sex assigned at birth are not binaries, but spectrums. Oh my god, no! Sex is not a spectrum. That is not true. Now, this program, the Welcoming Schools program, is framed by the Human Rights Campaign as an anti-bullying initiative. And of course, nobody wants to see students bullied in any way, whether it's because they're feminine, because they've got a different way of expressing themselves, because they have two dads, two moms. Nobody should be bullied in school. That should absolutely be cracked down upon. And if all this actually was, an anti-bullying initiative, it wouldn't be controversial. But it's pretty clear there's a lot more to this. And in fact, what they're doing is pushing propaganda and ideology on impressionable young children. Not great! For example, one lesson plan in the program had kindergarten to second grade students read a book titled Red, A Crayon Story. And after reading the book, the teacher facilitates a session using crayons where students explore their identity. Each student will create a crayon about themselves that explores their inner identities, the lesson plan said. The goal was to provide students with an opportunity to share some of their identities with classmates and teachers, and to explore the concept of gender identity with students. It is important to teach young children that we cannot assume someone's gender identity based on their gender expression, it continued. The lesson plan also gave an example of someone who looks like a girl but identified as non-binary with the pronouns they, them. And don't worry, guys, they weren't just pushing radical LGBT activism, but they had progressive activism of all stripes in this package, in this lesson plan, that was being pushed on children as young as kindergarten, as you heard. So this other lesson plan, which is for grades 3 to 5, so at least this one wouldn't be pushed on the kindergartners, was titled Social Justice Acrostic Poems, which had students share and explore issues they are passionate about through acrostic poetry. The plan has the teacher write down a list of social justice movements that the kids can support and included examples. I wonder what those examples are going to be. Is there going to be a pro-life movement on there? Yeah, no. Yeah, you know where this is going. The examples include Black Lives Matter, respect all languages, animal rights, climate change, migration is beautiful, LGBTQ rights, women's rights, water is life, disability rights, gun control, or march for our lives. Oh, good. That seems politically neutral and unbiased. There is no other word for this than insane. It is indoctrination, it is propaganda, it is wildly inappropriate, it is an overstep. Schools should not be teaching kids political ideologies and worldviews like this, especially kids this young and impressionable. It should be up to parents to discuss these concepts with their children. And it's very misleading to call something an anti-bullying campaign and then essentially backdoor it and use it to spread ideological propaganda is actually really disingenuous and insulting and counterproductive for the victims of bullying, which is a serious issue. The other thing, too, is this is the kind of thing. HRC is supposed to promote LGBT acceptance. That's what its donors give it millions of dollars every year to do. But this is actually the kind of thing that does the opposite. That's leading to widespread backlash against the LGBT community because a lot of people, I think quite understandably, feel like this is an overreach and that they are coming for your children after all. Even though most of us everyday people aren't, the activists kind of are in this way. And that's leading to backlash and backsliding in LGBT support. So they're actually accomplishing the opposite of their goals, which, great job, I guess. And it's so frustrating to me, and we saw this after 2020, that so many corporations would get in bed with political activist organizations and fund them like this. Like, that is not your job. You are a business. Provide services to people. Provide goods. Employ people. Focus on making money. Serve your community that way, but don't become an ideological business. That's just totally inappropriate. It's not what anyone wants from our frickin' retail stores, and it's just a betrayal of your shareholders and your customers, many of whom probably don't support this nonsense. Now, I did tell you at the beginning that there was a positive spin, a silver lining to this story, and I do believe that, and I do want to point that out for you guys. I think we're seeing a turn away from this kind of corporate activism because there has been a backlash to it, and I think people in the boardrooms are starting to take notice. So, for example, when Fox Business reached out to Home Depot about this, well, Home Depot was very quick to point out that they have discontinued this partnership and it ended back in 2023. They still deserve a lot of criticism for doing it in the first place, but it is a good sign that they've cut ties on that. And I think a lot of companies and corporations are rolling back a lot of the insane activism they got into in 2020 and the mad couple of years that ensued after that because of public pressure and because of them really realizing that it was counterproductive and destructive in many ways. So while this story is in a sense horrifying because it's a little glimpse into the truly insane stuff that's been going on in woke activism and corporate America over the last few years, I also find it a little bit heartening because I do see it as a sign that the tide is turning and hopefully sanity is making at least a little bit of a comeback. You guys let me know what you think of this crazy story in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that like button while you're at it. Up next, we've got to talk about Kamala Harris's economic agenda because she just recently acknowledged and unveiled another bit of it that's sparking controversy and a lot of discussion online. And that bit is her agreement with a Biden-era proposal to issue a new tax on unrealized capital gains, basically increases in the value of stocks and assets that you haven't sold yet. So if you're just a capital gain would be if you own a stock and it's worth $1 and it goes up to $1.50, you've had a 50% capital gain, even though you haven't sold that stock. So that's the concept. There's going to be a tax under the Harris proposal of 25% on capital gains. And there's been a lot of panic on this online that's made it sound like she's just going to do a broad capital gains tax on all of it, which would be a big deal. that's not actually quite right. She's only proposed this for a small percentage of people who have over $100 million worth of assets and investments, which is only about 10,000 people or groups that this would even apply to. So it is somewhat niche, but it's an interesting idea that's sparking a lot of pushback from economists and financial analysts. Nonetheless, even despite the somewhat limited scope of the initial proposal, though these things often start out initially pretty narrow and then grow and expand over time. Just look at the income tax. Anyway, it's getting a lot of pushback, and I want to play this very interesting exchange between one of Kamala Harris's top campaign advisors and the hosts of a CNBC show, where they argued with him about whether this is really just the common sense thing he was making it out to be. Frankly, guys, this Kamala simp just got exposed on live television.
Unrealized gains, taxing unrealized gains just doesn't seem fair in any sense of the word.
In the very best
sense, if you are taxing unrealized gains, all you're doing is pulling forward the taxes that would be paid later when someone actually sells the stock.
I think that this reaction to unrealized gains is a little funny, given that I bet that the majority of people watching right now are already paying a tax on unrealized gains. It's called a property tax. When the value of your home goes up,
it's a use tax.
When the value of your home goes up, you pay higher taxes, even if you don't sell your home.
Your value of your home never moves the way a stock moves, the way something else moves.
That's always the go-to answer.
It's also, property tax is a use tax. You're paying for the schools, you're paying for emergency services. Those are things that make absolute sense.
And sure, and all the revenue that comes in from these unrealized gains taxes and the other taxes in the Harris plan are going to go to creating what she calls more opportunity. It's to make sure that every newborn born in this country gets $6,000.
Using the services.
Well, look, you're arguing that this is some sort of foreign concept that's completely unknown in the U.S. tax code.
It's probably unconstitutional. It's probably, and it was never in anyone's intent to tax.
It's not an income tax,
and it's never going to happen. Probably.
Whew. He just got absolutely cooked. I almost can't help but feel bad for the guy. But when you're a political flack, that's what you got to do. You got to go on TV or in public and defend horrible ideas that your politician has put out there. And it didn't go well for him. But these CNBC hosts are exactly right. Yes, this proposal from Kamala is very narrow and limited to just the ultra wealthy, but that doesn't change a couple key problems with the very concept of a tax on unrealized capital gains. One is an issue of fundamental fairness and common sense. You're taxing someone on money they don't have yet. That's not fair and doesn't make sense. The other problem with it is that when you're taxing people on the hypothetical increases in the value of their assets, even though they haven't sold them, well, what are you going to do when those go back down? Are they going to get a rebate, a check from the government? Are they going to get a refund? Are they going to get a discount on future taxes? It's just a whole headache. It's a nightmare. Another huge issue is that a tax on unrealized capital gains is basically a wealth tax, which is unconstitutional. The Constitution sets out specific parameters for how direct taxes must be apportioned among the states. Very basically, it's complicated, but there's a bunch of things that you have to do with taxes in the Constitution. That's why we had to add a constitutional amendment in order to issue an income tax, because otherwise that form of taxation would have been unconstitutional. And without a similar constitutional amendment, which is never going to happen, at least not anytime soon, a wealth tax or a tax on unrealized capital gains is blatantly unconstitutional. Not that Kamala Harris really cares. Now, they would argue that this kind of a tax only affects the ultra rich, and in a sense, that's true. Their specific proposal is focused on people who have $100 million or more in assets, which isn't most of us. That's absolutely fair. However, it's only limited like that for now. So, for example, when they introduce a new tax, they did this with the income tax, it starts out as something that only a tiny portion of the population or only the super rich pay. And then over time, once they get that foot in the door, it broadens and we end up all paying it. So it could end up being much broader if it were to be implemented and somehow pass constitutional muster. The other thing is that this kind of tax would hurt the stock market. It would force people to sell stocks prematurely to pay the tax. It would reduce the incentive for holding some of these investments. It would hurt the stock market, which a lot of Americans do have a vested interest in because of their retirement plans. So even if it would only technically apply to the ultra rich, it has economic ramifications that would affect everyday people. It's just a horrible idea on both policy merits and constitutional legitimacy, and just as a matter of fundamental fairness and practicality. But from Kamala Harris's perspective, it sounds good, I guess. We're going to tax the ultra-rich to help you out is just cheap demagoguery that is emotionally compelling to people who maybe don't fully understand the specifics of what is actually entailed with this bonkers proposal. But I think it's wrong to lie to people like this, to give them false hope or promise them things that won't actually work out and you can't actually do. Yet that's exactly what Kamala Harris is doing. There's just no getting around it. You guys let me know what you think. Have you ever thought about this question of taxing unrealized capital gains before? I do want to hear from you in the comments. And now it's time for Brad versus TikTok, my daily segment where I take on the craziest ideas from the Clock app.
Pronoun of the day is slugs.
Today, we're watching a very unhinged and not super musically talented song from a communist TikToker who is apparently remarkably bloodthirsty, to be honest. Let's take a listen and buckle up. Prepare yourself. You've been warned.
You wanna guess the person that I'm voting for, but I don't want to talk about this shit no more. Doesn't matter which team, red, green, or blue. Every president is evil and will not save you. All they do is run their mouth and drain the global south. We gotta turn this shit out, know what I'm talking about. Cause everyone should have a house and get to pick their spouse. Plus we need to save the cows, know what I'm talking about. So conscience havers, will you listen? Don't you wanna see billionaires but listen? The answer is communism. Gotta find a place where there ain't no schism. Marx and Lenin, them hoes did it. Gales all the tips, so let's go get it. We'll make all the rich fuck shit it. Send them to the team, then we'll be done with it. Call me commies if you're with me.
I love how people like this can literally call for violence and bloodshed on TikTok, but like if I just post like even a milk toast, center right opinion, half the time I get my video taken down, I get a strike, whatever. Oh my God. Can't stand it. Can't stand the inconsistency. It's maddening. First and foremost, though, some of this I just like really don't understand. Like what she's talking about. Everyone should be able to pick their own spouse. I mean, I guess maybe if you're talking about some third world countries or the Middle East or something, maybe that's not the case. But in America, it sure is. What? I didn't really understand that part. Same with the save the cows. Was that like a vegan thing? Is that part of communism now that we can't eat meat anymore? Can't drink milk? I don't know. I wasn't quite following that part of it. And I will just say on the musical performance, I'll give her like a 5 or 6 out of 10. And maybe that the bar's just been set very low by like lefties performing on TikTok. But it wasn't horrible. Like it didn't want to make my ears, it did make my ears want to bleed, to be clear, but that was more because of the substance than the musical presentation, right? I mean, babe, it's giving unhinged. You're out here talking about how you want to see fellow Americans who are billionaires, who are successful entrepreneurs. You want to see their blood glisten. You want to send them to the guillotine. Babe, that's evil. You're actually a bad person if you wish violence on people with families and loved ones just because you envy their wealth and are jealous of them. I mean, that's sick. That's really messed up. I do disagree with it, but I can understand the perspective of somebody who thinks billionaires shouldn't exist because they're this huge socialist and so they want to tax all their money away. But not literally kill them. That is demented. It's just demented. I mean, you're actually a bad person if you think that. I'm sorry. In the same way, to cite Lenin positively is just jaw-dropping to me. I mean, you're talking about a brutal dictator responsible for the deaths of millions, an authoritarian tyrant. Jeez. I want to read you guys a list from Reason of the things that Vladimir Lenin, the first leader of the Soviet Union, instituted during his time in power. Here are some of the things he was directly responsible for. The Gulag system of slave labor camps. The Cheka, secret police agency eventually known as the KGB. The collectivization of agriculture leading to mass famines. mass executions with little or no due process, a one-party state with bans on all opposition parties, including socialist ones, the suppression of freedom of speech and religion, the confiscation of private businesses, including even small businesses, invading other nations in order to spread communism there, state control of the media for purposes of promoting regime propaganda and preventing distribution of opposition speech. Oh, and he was also responsible for promoting and uplifting Joseph Stalin, who would go on to succeed him and kill many more millions of people with his evil policies. That's your man. That's who you're simping for. Really. Girly here needs to get her head checked, but it's scary to me how many thousands, if not millions, of impressionable young people on TikTok actually seem to like this, to think this is a bop or cool or trendy or somehow an ideology they share. It's really frightening stuff, even if you just look at the comments on this video. If I still ran a daycare, I'd be singing this at musical playtime. Well, babe, then I'm glad you don't run a daycare. You shouldn't be allowed within 5,000 feet of a daycare. Another person said, ma'am, I did not know I was going to be blessed this hard today. Thanks for sharing your talent. Another person said, hell yeah, comrade. Another person wrote, this is actually brat. Another person wrote, cheers to Kami Autumn. Oh my God. I'm trying really hard not to lose hope, not to just view the world as bleak. I do believe we can be saved. I do, but TikTok makes it really hard sometimes because the evil, like that, there's no other word for this, right? This is evil. The evil ideas that go on and are spread and are inculcated among the youth on this app are appalling. And they'll lead to the destruction of this country if they become widespread and will become truly a horror story. So I'm deeply concerned by this kind of content. I mean, part of me wants to laugh at it or make fun of it, but on another level, I'm deeply disturbed. And I don't know how we go about lifting these confused young people out of this dark ideological puddle that they're drowning in. I just don't know. But I'm going to keep doing my best, and I appreciate you guys watching and supporting me. So do share my content with a Gen Zer in your life if you want to maybe counter program some of the nonsense that they're seeing elsewhere on the internet. And now I'll wrap up today's show with a few of your comments from the last episode. One person says, I assume the math is DEI too. The sum of MIT admissions, class of 27, adds up to 112%, not 100%. All math matters? So I laughed at this comment, and other people's pointed this out, that as far as MIT's new diversity data, the percentages of the different racial groups didn't add up to 100%. But I don't think that was a mistake. I think that what they were doing was you could check more than one box. So somebody could mark themselves as both Black and Hispanic if they are biracial. And that's how you get an over 100%. They could be both white and Asian, or I guess I think that's what happened there. I don't think it was actually a math error, but if it was, that'd be funny and ironic. Another person wrote with a super thanks. Remember, guys, I'll read your comment if you send a super thanks. Just wanted to send a little thank you. I've watched a lot of right-wing commentators, but they eventually go way too far right to the point I cannot even agree anymore. So thank you for keeping it real and honest, even if I don't agree all the time. Yeah, guys, that's all I'm trying to do. And you don't have to always agree, but I really appreciate your willingness to hear me out and go on this crazy, wild journey with me. Another person says, my comment has nothing to do with this video specifically, but you've quickly become one of my favorite people to watch on social media. You and one of my other favorites, Robbie Swab, need to do a podcast together. I actually know Robbie very well. We've been friends for years, and we've collaborated on a couple things over the past. Maybe I'll have him on the podcast sometime. So another person writes, hey, Brad, I was wondering if when you react to TikToks, you're reacting for the first time all the way through. Similarly, how do you make those faces? They are legitimately funny and add great character to your reactions. So no, I have usually seen them once before because I plan, like I find them to put them in the show notes. So I've seen them once before, but then I kind of try to react with a blank slate. But I do think about the things I'm going to say beforehand about them, so I'll prepare that a little bit. And then in terms of the faces, I've honestly just always been a super expressive person. It would get me in trouble in school because I would roll my eyes or my facial expressions would give away that I thought what my coach or my teacher was saying is dumb. So I've always just had really extreme facial expressions, and I've always kind of been an open book, and I'm just not very good at holding those things in. So yeah, that part's just me. All right, guys, that's it for this episode of the Brad vs. Everyone podcast. Thank you all so much for joining me and tuning in. Do remember to subscribe if you aren't yet. Hit that like button before you go and comment with your thoughts. I do read the comments, and I'll pick a couple of the ones you leave today, especially if you leave a super thanks, and I'll read them on tomorrow's episode. With that, we'll talk again tomorrow.